I'm here in Pergamum. We are at someplace. We're going to the 7 churches of Paul in Turkey. You saw my last video, of course. And so I hope you guys can kind of see how, I don't know. So this right here is a theater. It's about 200 feet high. And this is our group.
Courtyard, that's where you practice. You practice wrestling, you practice javelin throwing, you would sit around and discuss the philosophies of the day. And because human is at the pinnacle, most of it was done in the nude, gymnos, in the nude, because beauty is naked. And that's the core of what this culture is, because that's the essence of who you are, and you want to show.
Imagine how many narcissists are in this world. Everyone is. I'm a little bit slow. I am not a narcissist. I'm not a narcissist. I just have way too much attitude. I ain't no narcissist. I just have an attitude.
Yeah. All right, so we are on the main road that led from the Artemis Temple across by the theater and then to the harbor. This harbor has silted in. It's more than 5 miles away now, but they had to keep digging it out to keep it clean. It was a very shallow harbor. That's why when you understand how these systems are, Smyrna becomes very, very important because they had a deep water bay. But because they had technology, they were starting to be able to dredge out the harbor, and Ephesus really comes to be important. I want to stop here real quick and just bring up why we want to study the text. There's something that has become my main focus in life, and that is trying to, what my shirt says, being a disciple. Being a disciple of Jesus as it was in context. What did it look like to be a first century disciple of Jesus and walk in his footprints, get covered in his dust as he's traveling these trails, and understand this story? We are Western. We are not Eastern. The Bible was written for us, but it was not written to us. So we have to try to grasp what this Bible was written like to the original people who it was written to. We can read it and understand it and get the theology, but to really grasp those nuances that are happening, it's really difficult to do. Only way to do that is to step back in time. And there's been one book in the Bible I've avoided, and it's the last one, because it's so hard to understand that book because of the context. I have no idea what your beliefs and which pre, post, mid, whatever you are. But when these people received that book, it made sense to them. When they read Revelation, they understood it. And that's one of the ones we're going to focus on most of it, because we're doing the 7 churches more than anything. But put yourself in the image or in the mindset of John. Because Christ had one final revelation. It's not revelations, it's revelation. One final revelation. He starts out and says that this is one revelation. So, John is a disciple of Jesus. He's the one that leaned up against the chest of Jesus at the Last Supper. He was there at the base of the cross during the crucifixion. He was there when Christ looked at him and said, "John, please take care of my mother." And he does. And he is the pastor of Asia Minor. Do we think of the author of Revelation of being the pastor? He is the one that has been to all these churches. He's ate with them. He's preached and taught with them. He's sat around their table. He's walked along the way with them. He knows them by name. He knows everything about these churches. He's got the heart of this teacher that's living in this area. And now, all of the other disciples have died. He's the last one on earth. And then Christ, in a dream, it says in the Spirit of the Lord's Day, doesn't know, maybe he went up, maybe it was a dream, and he hears behind him a voice of a trumpet. Did he recognize the voice? That's his rabbi. That's his friend. I often wonder what that homecoming would have been like. Did John, he says he falls down dead and worships God. That's the first response. But I wonder if he looked up and there was Peter, there was Mary the mother, there was all the disciples around him, say, "John, welcome." And then he says, "I've got one more thing I got to tell them." And every single letter in the book of Revelation begins by saying, I know their works. I know exactly what their works are. I know who they are. And I think John looks at him and says, yeah, I do too. I know everything about them. And they said, okay, we got one more message that we can give them. And then Christ and John comes back here and writes the letters. The first church of Revelation begins the writing. Right there.
First Church of Revelation.
First church in the letters of Revelation.
Oh, is that the
Yeah. And he has this pastor's heart and begins to write. We often disconnect this story of where people live and why and what is happening. You have a real person sitting down and writing to real people that he knows. He's not just saying Pergamum. He's just not saying